Chapter 906, Treaty of Alliance. Zhang Weiyu and Lu Shu stood opposite one another. They were considering the pros and cons, as well as their judgment of the 5 techniques. Lu Shu had dismissed the rest of the people. Their conversation had to be classified. After Zhang Weiyu sensed Lu Shu's apprehension, he understood the choice he had to make. He looked at Lu Shu and said, "This is a good opportunity that only happens once in a blue moon. But we have to see whether we can afford it." Lu Shu took a long time to think about the position of a heavenly king. These techniques were nothing to him. Zhang Weiyu suddenly emphasized, "This time, we don't need you to make any promises. We don't need you to agree to any conditions either. Just allow us to train them." Lu Shu paused for 2 seconds. "Sure, but you have to agree to one condition." "Sure. What is it?" Zhang Weiyu looked at Lu Shu with a serious expression. But Zhang Weiyu suddenly felt that something was not right. Wait, he was giving someone else techniques. Why did he have to agree to a condition? What? Why were the roles reversed? He had come to make Lu Shu feel obliged to return him a favor. Not only did Lu Shu not feel obliged, it was as if he was receiving an act of gratitude from Zhang Weiyu. Zhang Weiyu quickly looked at Lu Shu's innocent expression. From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 666. "Let me settle this," said Zhang Weiyu. "I came here to give you techniques. Why do I have to agree to your condition?" Lu Shu innocently looked at Zhang Weiyu. "You settle it." Zhang Weiyu thought about it. He decided to start from the very beginning. "We want to give you 5 techniques." "No," said Lu Shu. "We don't need you to make any promises. You just need to allow us to train them." "Sure, but you have to agree to one condition." Lu Shu let go of his grip. "Do you have any problems with that?" From Zhang Weiyu's distress points, plus 199. Zhang Weiyu sighed. Sure. What is it?" "The condition is that you teach for free," said Lu Shu calmly. "You see, our Weiwu army has a lot of expenses, but we have no income now. Thus, money is very important." Zhang Weiyu pondered. Since when had it become our Weiwu army? He even felt some resonance with this name. "But you had dragged the conversation on for so long, just to reveal that you were not willing to pay each person 2,000 notes?" Zhang Weiyu was not dumb. He knew where the problem was. This had occurred because they wanted to treat the Weiwu army like an intricate toy. Although they were disabled, if an army was able to produce stunning results under their training, it would act as a consolation to them as well. Thus, this caused Zhang Weiyu and the rest to see the Weiwu army the same way parents hoped, that their children would be able to achieve their unfulfilled wishes. They would give them the best resources and send them off for every journey. In the end, it was because they had been lonely for too long. The once glorious imperial palace soldiers had fallen into an abyss. They were filled with immense regret and hurt. But now, they had suddenly realized that a group of disabled people like them had a chance to shine again. There was slight excitement and anticipation. But most importantly, Zhang Weiyu understood Lu Shu. Lu Shu had helped them and had helped Zhang Weiyu himself. He was grateful to Lu Shu for saving his life. It was important that Lu Shu did not own any powers. Lu Shu himself also had secrets that he concealed. This formed the basis of their mutual trust. The imperial palace soldiers did not give their lives to anyone but the king of gods. But now, they did not have to give their lives to anyone. To Zhang Weiyu, they were here because of their feelings, not because of the benefits. They had not changed. They still did not give in to the temptation of the large aristocrat families. Their loyalty still lies with the king of gods. This sounded somewhat unreasonable. They did not want high positions and great wealth. Instead, they had run to the mountains to train the broken Weiwu army. But this protected their last bit of respect as imperial palace soldiers. It seemed as if Lu Shu had seen this. Thus, he was willing to put forth a condition. Zhang Weiyu calmly looked at Lu Shu. We have to care about food, right? Lu Shu immediately beamed with joy. Yes, 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 we have to take care of that. Not take the tray away? Zhang Weiyu asked in a cold voice. He knew that Lu Shu had suggested Li Heighten to take the tray of gifts.
Ha! Ha! Ha!
This is a misunderstanding. After they had finished their discussion, Lu Xiaoyu saw Lu Shu wink at her. It was decided. Suddenly, Lu Shu could not wait to see how the Wei Wu army would progress in the future. That night, Lu Shu came to the barack where Zhang Weiyu and the rest were staying in. Over 50 people were either sitting on the beds or on the floor. They all looked at Lu Shu. Lu Shu smiled. I look forward to working with all of you. Zhang Weiyu patted his shoulder. We need to clarify the rights of control over the Wei Wu army. Lu Shu calmed down. They were talking about the main issue. But rights of control over the Wei Wu army? How would they discuss this? Lu Shu definitely would not give these people the rights over the Wei Wu army. Don't think too much about it, said Zhang Weiyu calmly. Although we are willing to give you our techniques, we don't want these techniques to leak out. Thus, the people in the Wei Wu army must be under your control. We are trusting you, not them. What do you mean? Lu Shu thought about it and asked, do you have any way to ensure that? Make all of them your slaves, said Zhang Weiyu. We have the techniques. Maybe you are still unable to accept all of them as your slaves in one go, but we can do this slowly. We will only be relieved if all of them become your slaves. Lu Shu hesitated. He was a modern man, not a person from this world. Thus, Zhang Weiyu and the rest felt that taking in slaves was unimportant and normal, but Lu Shu felt very awkward. He never wanted to oppress anyone, and had never thought about becoming a slave owner. He never wanted anyone to control his freedom. Thus, he treated others the same way he wanted to be treated. He was not willing to control the freedom of others. It would be hypocritical if I said that people are equal. I do not wish to control anyone else. I have never thought of occupying a high position and looking down on others either. Furthermore, I approve this point of view. Controlling the loyalty of others is not true loyalty. When one's life and freedom is in their own hands, only then will that person be able to make use of his fullest potential. When he finished speaking, Zhang Weiyu and the rest looked at one another helplessly. It was as if they were immersed in thought. After some time, Zhang Weiyu took a deep breath and said, "You are extremely similar to someone we know. She once said something similar to yours. Of course, there are differences in your choice of words." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Who else had said something similar to Zhang Weiyu and the rest? Lu Shu felt that there was something fishy, but he could not figure out what. It is not that I am unwilling to accept them as slaves. I just feel that this is not the best way, said Lu Shu. Are there any other methods other than taking them in as slaves? I am not unreasonable. To be honest, I am not a selfless person. Although I do not want others to become my slaves, I also do not want to have any betrayals. Lu Shu was an earthly and pragmatic person. He was willing to confess his selfishness. At the same time, he would stick to his moral values. Yes, there is another way, said Zhang Weiyu after some thought. A treaty of alliance. The party pledging their allegiance will willingly sign a treaty of alliance with the host. The host is unable to control the actions of the other party. But when the other party betrays the host, the treaty will destroy and discontinue their foundations. But you have to think about it. This treaty of alliance is weaker compared to the seal of a slave. The greatest advantage that slave owners have is that if they want to send their slaves to their deaths, the slaves have to do so. Some slaves are born to be cannon fodders on the battlefield. If you want to use this method, you have to be careful in your operations. They only cannot betray you. Lu Shu sighed. This was enough for him. He did not need anyone to become cannon fodder for him either. Loyalty could not be exchanged for chains. The Heavenly Network had never accepted anyone as slaves. No one was forced to their deaths. Thus, the word hero was significant. Chapter 907, Mutiny. How would they make over 3,000 soldiers from the Weiwu army be willing to sign a treaty of alliance with Lu Shu and treat Lu Shu as the core? This was a very difficult question. To Zhang Weiyu, these roamers were used to the days free of restraint. Although a treaty of alliance was a relatively light restraint, it was still binding. But if there was no way to guard against the soldiers, they were not willing to give their 5 techniques. These techniques could be worth an entire city. The techniques were how top aristocrat families had risen to prominence. There were times when Zhang Weiyu thought that he was crazy for offering such things. He had even agreed to Lu Shu's condition. I think that we have to spread this out in advance, said Zhang Weiyu. This is a treaty of alliance that will involve over 3,000 people. If they do not agree and initiate a mutiny, we no longer have to discuss about the future. Lu Shu thought about it. I think it is still better to tell them in a candid manner and allow them to choose for themselves. Lu Shu and Zhang Weiyu's thought processes were different. Zhang Weiyu and the rest had started to imagine. If they could train the Weiwu army, the army might be useful in the future. What if they had contributed significantly to this? But Lu Shu was different. What he wanted now was self-protection. When the war ended and he received an official document indicating that he was a commander, he would write a recommendation letter himself and apply to the Sword Hut. This would happen in about a year or so. Lu Shu had the confidence that he would be able to advance to rank 1 in that period of time. Zhang Weiyu had said that most of the people who had been selected to join the Sword Hut were rank 2s. Those who were below rank 2 were not even willing to be sent to their deaths. If Lu Shu was able to advance to rank 1, he would definitely have an advantage in the selections. Thus, Lu Shu was a visitor. He only wanted self-protection and money from his soap business. As for making the Weiwu army more powerful, it was just convenient for him. Most importantly, he wanted to make the Weiwu army a large army. Thus, their attitudes were different. This caused Lu Shu to feel that it was of no importance if people wanted to leave because of the alliance. Zhang Weiyu laughed coldly. This is your own army. Of course, you will make the decision. It is just a matter of whether you can handle the consequences. Lu Shu did not care. What could he not handle? He had the bishop, Anthony, Lu Xiaoyu, and Johnson by his side. Who in the Weiwu army would be able to oppose them? Thus, Lu Shu gathered everyone from the Weiwu army. Zhang Weiyu and the rest observed coldly by the side. They waited for Lu Shu to settle this. The Weiwu army gathered. They looked dumbfounded. Some of them had rolled up their trouser legs and their feet were full of dirt. They had just come from the fields. There was a large, flat ground in Qinglu Mountain that acted like a parade square. Everyone did their exercises here every morning. Lu Shu stood in the parade square and looked at everyone. He said in a clear voice, plainly speaking, I want to give everyone an opportunity. Thus, I need to have absolute control over the Weiwu army. This is like doing a business. I cannot suffer losses while trading. I can force everyone to become my slave, but I don't like controlling others. I believe that you do not want to lose your freedom either. Thus, I have thought of a compromise. At that moment, before Lu Shu could finish speaking, Li Haitan suddenly shouted, Great Lord, I am willing to become your slave. Zhang Weiyu was dumbfounded. Had Lu Shu planned this in secret? Or was Li Haitan serious about this? But before he could fully understand the situation, a large group of people shouted, Great Lord, let us be your slaves. We don't need freedom. Even Lu Shu was dumbfounded. A group of people were striving to be the first, as if they were afraid that they could not become his slave. Only Lu Shu knew that he had not made Li Haitan say this kind of thing. Zhang Weiyu and the rest completely could not understand what was happening. They were smart people. Thus, they could see that the Wei Wu army was willing. No one had forced or threatened them. Even if Li Haitan had led the way, everyone had their own mind. Just one sentence could lead to this. Thus, these soldiers of the Wei Wu army were really willing to become Lu Shu's slaves. Zhang Weiyu and the rest could not understand this world. But they had overlooked one problem from the very beginning. This did not mean that Lu Shu was extremely respected or adored by the Wei Wu army, but that Zhang Weiyu and the rest had not understood the mentality of a slave. These people wanted a way to survive in this chaotic world. There were two things that the Wei Wu army liked about what Lu Shu had done. Firstly, Lu Shu was not demanding. To be honest, even if they had escaped to the mountains, it was much more free and comfortable than when they were in the old Wei Wu army or when they were slaves. Secondly, Lu Shu was very powerful. Everyone pondered how strong Lu Shu was, given that the servant with a pink scarf was a rank 1. Furthermore, what had happened in the past that had allowed Lu Shu to take in a rank 1 expert as his servant? A rank 1. After the chaos was over, and they became Lu Shu's slaves, the future would be bright for Wei Wu army. Furthermore, everyone felt that Lu Shu was different from the experts in high positions. He had never treated anyone like ants, as he had always lived on this world with a sincere attitude. Now, they were not worried that their freedom would be lost. They were worried that Lu Shu did not have the mental ability to take all of them as slaves. The definition of mental ability was very broad. No one had specialized in training mental ability. No one even knew how to train. But it had become an important index for the number of slaves in this world. Thus, the Wei Wu army was different from Zhang Weiyu and the rest in terms of their ideologies. Zhang Weiyu and the rest occupied high positions as imperial palace soldiers. Even after they had fallen, they still had their pride. But the Wei Wu army soldiers were different. Lu Shu patiently explained, "You do not have to become slaves. I believe that you will appreciate the decision I have made today in the future. You will also realize how wonderful freedom is." Before he could finish speaking, someone below shouted, "No, we want to become slaves." Zhang Weiyu muttered, "What? They are all crazy." An imperial palace soldier beside him said with an irritated tone, "Could it be that we were wrong?" Lu Shu was still trying to explain patiently, while the Wei Wu army was very excited. Some would rather die than become a slave. Others were willing to become a slave even if it meant death. The mutiny that Zhang Weiyu and the rest were worried about had happened, but in a bizarre way. But Lu Shu still persisted. In the end, he rejected the request of the Wei Wu army. Instead, he chose to sign a treaty of alliance with them using their souls. He felt that one day, they would eventually be grateful for the decision that he had made today. Thus, the Treaty of Alliance fulfilled his need to control the Wei Wu army. Chapter 908, Don't Be Rash. When the soldiers from the Wei Wu army realized that the Great Lord had not taken them in as slaves, they felt a sense of regret. Li Haitan said in a serious tone, "Perhaps we are too weak and the Great Lord does not think much of us." The soldiers of the Wei Wu army looked at one another helplessly. This was very likely. The Great Lord's servant was a rank 1. What gave them the right to become his slave? What should they do? Some even wanted to hurry up and train, but the problem was, their techniques had already reached a bottleneck. It was of no use even if they trained. Thus, everyone was somewhat disheartened. They still did not know what opportunity Lu Shu was talking about. To them, Lu Shu himself was the opportunity. Unimportant people had their own survival wisdom. They were like grass. They were used to going wherever the wind blew and firmly living there. Lu Shu wanted them to become a large tree and shoulder heavier responsibilities. Zhang Weiyu and the rest realized that the situation had started to develop in a way that was hard for them to understand. Lu Shu softly sighed. I almost couldn't control the situation. You were right about your worries. A mutiny almost happened. Zhang Weiyu saw a hint of cockiness in Lu Shu's expression. From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 666. A group of people pulled Zhang Weiyu aside. Don't be rash. You can't defeat him. Although Lu Shu did not want to control the freedom of others, he felt a sense of accomplishment with so many people desperate to become his slave. When he returned to Earth, he would tell his comrades in the Heavenly Network, did you know? After I went there, so many people insisted on becoming my slave. Zhang Weiyu laughed coldly to the rest of the Imperial Palace soldiers. Let him be complacent for now. He doesn't know how much mental strength is needed to maintain the Treaty of Alliance. I won't remind him to sign the treaty by batches. I want to see how a rank 4 practitioner suffers when he overspends his mental strength. They had told Lu Shu how to sign the Treaty of Alliance. Lu Shu had started to accept the souls of the soldiers to sign the treaty. He suddenly felt that he had started to establish a connection with the soldiers who had signed the treaty. He could not control them, but could transmit faint signals in one direction. Li Haitan thought of something. Before he could open his mouth to speak, it was as if Li Haitan had received a message. He grabbed a chair and gave it to Lu Shu. This was the message that Lu Shu had transmitted to him. Lu Shu suddenly realized something. This Treaty of Alliance seemed to have been created for the battlefield. If the commanders had the ability to transmit messages like this and had exceptional commanding abilities, the combat power of the army would exponentially increase. Zhang Weiyu and the rest watched by the side. He wanted to see the limits of Lu Shu's mental strength. Typically, mental strength was correlated to cultivation. The stronger the practitioner, the greater their mental strength. Usually, even an ordinary rank 1 expert out not be able to bear a treaty among over 3,000 people. But the problem was, Lu Shu had accepted treaties from over 1,000 people, but he seemed completely fine. Someone asked curiously, are you sure that he is a rank 4 practitioner? He has accepted treaties from over 1,000 people. How is he completely fine? Look at his expression. There's no change at all. Just wait, Zhang Weiyu started at Lu Shu. Every time Lu Shu accepted one treaty, he would say to the soldier, you are not my slave, not because I look down on you, but because I hope that you will understand the meaning of your life. You eat to live, but you do not live to eat. One day, you will be grateful for the freedom I have given you today and enjoy it. The soldiers of the Weiwu army did not quite seem to understand. They could not understand what Lu Shu meant given their standard of culture here. But for some reason, they were more or less touched. Because they could feel the charm of awakening their awareness and freedom in Lu Shu's ideology of this world. Because they could feel that Lu Shu saw them as people. In this chaotic world, it was a form of respect for slaves and roamer to be seen as people. As for Lu Shu, although he was not ambitious about the Weiwu army, he suddenly wanted them to understand some morals as people, and not let them be content with being ants. The treaty was only finished after an entire day. Even Lu Shu felt fatigued. But when he stood up, he realized with some doubt that Zhang Weiyu and the rest were looking at him in shock. Zhang Weiyu walked over and carefully observed Lu Shu. Don't push yourself. I know that you definitely don't feel well after accepting so many treaties in one go. Lu Shu felt that this was rather bizarre. What are you talking about? How odd. With that, Lu Shu went into the limestone cave to train his swordplay, leaving Zhang Weiyu looking at Lu Shu's back with a serious expression on his face. Zhang Weiyu did not know that the first day Lu Shu started training, Li Xianyi had said that the Hall of Swords trained vitality. His strong mental state resonated with the heaven and the earth. His vigor was the sword energy. Till today, Lu Shu could not fully understand this mystery. But he continued to train his swordplay every day. As a result, Lu Shu's swordplay had reached the level where it resonated with heaven and earth. It had reached rank 1. Now, it was simply that his body could not keep up. "This young man is rather strange," said someone behind Zhang Weiyu. "He's more than that. Everything about him is strange. But to be honest, I quite like his personality." "It's quite interesting," said Dong Yi from the Imperial Palace soldiers. Zhang Weiyu furrowed his eyebrows. "I don't know whether we've made the right decision. When I was in the field, I thought that he was a dragon hiding in the abyss. But back then, I thought that he was far away from the day where he would be able to soar into the sky. Now, I believe that the day might be very close." "Why are you thinking so much?" Dong Yi smiled. "The higher he soars, the greater the help he will be to use in the future. If we are able to train the Weiwu army and form a friendship with him, when he suddenly comes to find us, we will no longer be just a group of disabled people. At least we will be slightly useful. Anyway, why does he insist on going to the sword hut?" Someone asked curiously. "He is a commander of an army. There's no need for him to go to the sword hut and take a risk, right?" Zhang Weiyu thought about it and said, "I feel that he is finding something which he is highly involved in. It has something to do with a secret. I wanted to tell him that there was no need to go to the sword hut. But now, I no longer think so. I'm looking forward to what will happen when he goes to the sword hut. Of course, the most urgent issue we have now is to come up with a plan and completely transform the Weiwu army." Chapter 909, Standardizing Opinions. The Qinglu Mountain had settled down at night. Apart from those on patrol duty, everyone had gone to bed. Since Lu Shu trusted Zhang Weiyu and tasked them to train the soldiers, Lu Xiaoyu had to give them a copy of the map of the cave's route which Xiaoyu drew. On one hand, it served to show his trust in them. On the other hand, it was to allow them to be assured they had an alternative route even if the Black Feather Army came. Zhang Weiyu was extremely enthusiastic and reorganized the routes that the people on patrol took. Initially, the Weiwu army, including Lu Qianji and Li Haitan, were unwilling to be trained by a group of ordinary people. Weren't they just a few ordinary people? Li Haitan could kill one of them with a punch. However, after replotting their routes, Lu Qianji suddenly realized that their military power was much more concrete than his. Zhang Weiyu was also very surprised. Upon looking at the route of the cave, he realized that it was extremely connected and accessible underground. Once the Black Feather Army came, the Weiwu army would be able to enter the cave quickly in all directions if they knew about their arrival beforehand. Moreover, there were many exits to the cave and the tunnels were so long that Zhang Weiyu gasped in awe. He asked Lu Shu, "Did you purposely choose this location?" "It was a coincidence," Lu Shu said while smiling. "Heaven is on my side because I am handsome." From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 481. Go and die, can you stop boasting about your looks? Lu Xiaoyu suddenly felt worried as she watched by the side. Lu Shu was being arrogant. Zhang Weiyu continued examining the routes displayed on the map of the cave. He discovered that the entrances of the cave were coincidentally at the important walking paths in the mountain. They looked extremely hidden. Was that a coincidence? Zhang Weiyu was very sure that Lu Shu kept himself busy for the few weeks he had reached the cave. However, Zhang Weiyu did not know that there were over 10 minor routes, those final escape routes confirmed by Lu Shu, which Lu Xiaoyu did not mark out on the map. It was not because they were worried that Zhang Weiyu would betray them, but rather because Lu Shu had always been so cautious. In order to stay alive, he had to be wary. Initially, Zhang Weiyu was worried that the Black Feather Army would arrive before they finished training the soldiers. Now, he need not worry as they need not be afraid even if they came. Zhang Weiyu and Dong Yi discussed softly after returning to their room. Do you guys think that this map is complete? Someone smiled. Based on that chap's personality, this map is definitely incomplete. He will definitely make an escape route for himself. Zhang Weiyu nodded. It is understandable. If he showed the map to anyone he saw on the road, he would be extremely unreliable. Let's not bother about this, we only need to focus on training the Weiwu army. Let us double-check our plans to confirm who is responsible for which section and which technique, we cannot afford to get it wrong. After all, Zhang Weiyu and the rest were more dedicated than Lu Shu in terms of training the Weiwu army. Lu Shu was more concerned about teaching the Weiwu army how to read and write, which Zhang Weiyu and the rest regarded as something unimportant. In this world where hierarchy played an important role, most of the slaves did not have the right to learn about knowledge and culture. The slave owners wanted them to be more stupid as they believed that the more educated they are, the harder it would be for the slave owners to control them. However, Lu Shu thought otherwise. He felt that it was too difficult to interact with a bunch of people who were illiterate. Martial arts training needed time, similarly to cultivating one's cultural knowledge. One had to start from learning how to read. Lu Shu felt that an adult would be able to recognize all the words if they used 2 hours to learn how to read every night. However, he would not waste his time on this. Zhang Weiyu and the rest were in charge of teaching them how to read. Zhang Weiyu was initially confused and asked Lu Shu, "Is it really necessary to learn how to read? Isn't it enough if they knew how to fight?" They wanted to increase the overall competency of the Weiwu army by teaching them battle tactics and how to cooperate with each other. However, would recognizing words make one more powerful? Lu Shu smiled. For 2 armies with the same capability, would the army with a firm belief be more powerful, or would the army who only has the knowledge of battle tactics be more powerful? Zhang Weiyu thought about it. The former should be more powerful. With a firm belief, they would not even care about their lives. I didn't mean for them to die. I just hope to unify their beliefs, said Lu Shu. Zhang Weiyu was stunned for a while. None of the army in this world had noticed this before. The army just had to attack and one would be considered a good soldier if they were able to kill their opponents. Therefore, who would care about the beliefs of the soldiers? However, after giving it some serious thoughts, the famous soldiers were all successful in unifying their army's beliefs. For example, the Imperial Dragon soldiers had all alone carried the mission of guarding the throne. The sense of honor was also considered a unified belief, such that they viewed the life of the King of Gods as more important than their own lives. Now, Lu Shu seemed to be influencing them and inculcating the belief into the soldiers as they learned how to read. Learning how to read was secondary as the inculcating of belief was of the primary importance. Zhang Weiyu was curious, did Lu Shu learn about that himself? Was this chap a gifted trainer of the army? At this moment, Zhang Weiyu suddenly treasured this gifted individual. He wondered, if I had pushed him further, would he become a famous commander too? At this moment, Lu Shu suddenly asked, do you know mathematics? A little, Zhang Weiyu looked at Lu Shu cautiously. Then teach them some simple mathematics. If not, they won't even be able to calculate the price of the soap. What if they get scammed? Zhang Weiyu said. No way. He suddenly felt that he should not view the chap in front of him in too favorable a manner, or he would be extremely pissed off. Why was he still concerned about selling soap at this point in time? For some reason, Zhang Weiyu felt that Lu Shu was not kidding. He also predicted that the Weiwu army would really end up selling soap in the future. Zhang Weiyu felt like committing suicide when he thought about how a famous army ended up selling soap. Wait a minute. Zhang Weiyu was very certain that when the Azure Dragon village sold soap in the past, a group of bandits had stolen many soaps shamelessly. In the future, if the Weiwu army ended up as powerful as the Imperial Dragon soldiers, everyone would need to buy Lu Shu's soap. Zhang Weiyu suddenly realized that he had read Lu Shu's mind. Did that chap really have such low levels of moral principles? Chapter 9-10, Rising Powers. Lu Shu was anticipating how the power of the Weiwu army could be upgraded quickly, because he wanted to see if the method used by Zhang Weiyu and the rest was suitable for himself. After the soldiers of the Weiwu army had come to an agreement with Lu Shu, a significant reform officially began. Lu Shu told them what the so-called reform referred to. It was the teaching of a new tactic which was able to upgrade one to rank 1. At this moment, everyone of the Weiwu army started to go wild. The reason why they were unable to upgrade their powers was because their skills had reached a bottleneck and it was impossible for them to upgrade. Yet now, after following Lu Shu, not only had their quality of life upgraded, but they could also continue to upgrade their skills. Lu Qianji was the most excited of them all. The reason he chose to enter the Weiwu army was because he was only able to upgrade his skills to rank 3. If he entered an elite army like the Qingxai army, he would be overpowered by the talents inside. Therefore, as he wanted to be the best in the army, he came to the Weiwu army. Nobody was willing to accept the fact that his skills were inferior. Being rank 3 was nothing in this world and Lu Qianji had always dreamt to upgrade his skills. Suddenly, someone mumbled, "Is our commander crazy? He didn't adopt us as slaves when he decided to pass down the skills, for safety reasons, shouldn't he adopt us as slaves?" Initially, everyone was slightly regretful. They were not stupid and knew the significance behind being rank 1. Everyone was used to the unequal exchange of benefits in this emotionless world. In order to survive, one had to sell oneself as slaves. In order to cultivate one's skills, one had to die for their slave owner. In the world of an adult, everyone was concerned with deals and benefits. When everyone got used to this, a little bit of warmth allowed them to cherish it. This was also one of the reasons why they were willing to become Lu Shu's slaves. They felt that Lu Shu was significantly different from others. To put it frankly, Yi Xiaoming treated them as objects while Lu Shu treated them as humans. Lu Shu said to the Weiwu army, "I can actually take over the entire Weiwu army as, after all, I am the most powerful in the army." However, I felt that that was not good as it was as though nobody had a say in the prosperity of the Weiwu army, and this would cause all of you to lose motivation. I hope that everyone here would have the common understanding that none of you are slaves and nobody can force you to become slaves. Everything we are doing right now is for ourselves. As part of the team of the Weiwu army, we will become more powerful and live a better life if we unite. All of you are not fighting because of me, in fact, you are fighting for yourselves. In the past, all of you could only live under others' noses. Now that all of you have the skill of a rank 1, let's go out and fight for our future. The speech was not extremely motivating, but Lu Shu's intention was to tell everyone in the Weiwu army that the upgrade of skills of the Weiwu army required everyone's effort and not only Lu Shu's effort alone. Therefore, everyone had a share of the prosperity and benefits. The 5 tactics provided by Zhang Weiyu were carefully picked. Each of the 56 people were in charge of 60 soldiers of the Weiwu army. For convenience, Lu Shu redistributed the Weiwu army and grouped them into groups of 6 and putting 10 groups in a troop. All of the soldiers of the Weiwu army listened attentively to how Zhang Weiyu and the rest described the cultivation of skills. Everyone knew that it was probably the best opportunity they had in their entire life. Even Li Haitan sat properly. That was extremely rare because he usually acted as though he was hyperactive. When Lu Shu brought him to check out the Qinglu mountain, Li Haitan continuously flipped around Lu Shu and could not stand still at all. Initially, Lu Shu thought that Zhang Weiyu would allow everyone to practice after teaching them the tactics. However, after everyone mastered the method of manipulating their vital channels, Zhang Weiyu brought them to climb the mountains. Zhang Weiyu stood beneath the mountain and allowed Li Haitan and the rest to climb the mountains while practicing their skills. Won't this cause them to become obsessive? Lu Shu was shocked. After seeing Lu Shu's confusion, Zhang Weiyu felt that he had an upper hand in terms of knowledge. He smiled. Yes, they will become obsessive. Lu Shu was speechless. Don't torture them until they die. Rest assured, with their current abilities, nothing would go wrong even if something went awry with the roots of their vital channels. The worst would be to suffer pain. However, this will not be the case if they were more powerful. If they are afraid of suffering now, then they don't need to think about becoming more powerful, said Zhang Weiyu. There is a reason behind this training, please do not interfere. Lu Shu left without any expressions. He continued to practice his sword skills. However, Lu Xiaoyu did not leave. She asked while blinking, so what are the advantages of this method of practice? Zhang Weiyu could purposely ignore Lu Shu, but he could not bear to ignore the adorable Lu Xiaoyu. He knew that Lu Xiaoyu was asking this question on Lu Shu's behalf, but he explained nevertheless. This group of people had something wrong with their method of practice and cultivation. We hope that their spirit qi would collide in their bodies after they are distracted, causing the capacity of their vital channels to expand from the size of a stream to that of a sea. Although this is a violent method that would cause suffering and is usually not practiced, we have to do it now because we want their skills to grow quickly. Lu Xiaoyu nodded and left to explain to Lu Shu. Zhang Weiyu sighed as he saw this. Zhang Weiyu kept seeing Lu Xiaoyu lead the army out for a hunt and was initially worried for her safety. However, he realized that he was over-concerned. The way Lu Xiaoyu hunted was extremely unique. The wild creatures would follow her after she waved to them. Without using any weapons, she returned with many creatures. Some of them were even willing to let her sit on them. However, something went wrong in the rearing of these creatures. Rearing them meant that the numbers would increase, but Lu Xiaoyu realized that she could only control 36 creatures at once, and could not fulfill the requirement. Zhang Weiyu was waiting at the foot of the mountain. After about 2 hours, he heard Li Haitan's shouts as he ran back. Li Haitan was the first to accomplish the mission of climbing the mountains and immediately lay down on the ground to recuperate his spirit qi after he returned. He was moaning in pain and could not breathe properly.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens,